So, hi everybody, I'm here live with Michelle Tracy, my new best friend, one of my new best friends, and we're actually at Retreat Migraine, which is starting tomorrow. We're in San Antonio, Texas. I'm really hoping that somebody is there, so if you are there, and if you are watching us, then please say hi so that we know you are around. I see someone. I can't read. Can you read?
Hello, Shayna and Dreama. Nice to see you guys.
Nice to see you. So I can't see very well, just so you know. But fortunately, Michelle still has her eyesight, so we're doing good. We're actually having kind of a good time here, just because we're both so exhausted. Michelle has been up since 4 a.m. this morning.
I have.
Traveling, and I didn't go to sleep until 4 a.m. this morning because I didn't feel well. So we're kind of wiped out. But anyway, we're really happy to be here, and we're happy to share with you our personal CGRP stories. So I see some more people.
Hi, Alicia and Heather and Mary and Carrie and Darcy and Sue-Ann and Rose and Lynn and Valerie and Leanne.
We're so happy you're here. We really are,
Welcome.
actually. Yeah, and welcome. So I'm sure more people are going to join us, but we're going to get going. So basically, my name is Shoshana Lipson, and I'm the founder of CGRP and Migraine Disease Community, which is a support group on Facebook, and I'm also the founder of Migraine Meanderings. And Tracy is the founder of...
Tracy is my last name, and my first name is Michelle.
Okay, so that shows how exhausted I am. I don't even know what I'm saying, so I apologize.
And some of you may know me as the Migraine Warrior on Facebook. I also do some work with many different migraine organizations. So hello to Audrey and Sydney and all the people who are coming around and saying hello. We're so happy to have you here.
Yeah.
And
so in case you're wondering, those people who just came, why I was laughing is because I just called Michelle by her last name. I'm really exhausted. And I have some brain fog, so I'm sure that a lot of you know what that is like. So I'm really not thinking too straight. I'm going to do my best to try to be coherent here today. So anyway, the reason we wanted to share is because both Michelle and I have tried at least one of the CGRP medications, and we've had two completely different experiences. So we are excited to talk to you about those experiences. I know that a lot of you have questions about what it is like to be a responder or super responder, which is Michelle, and someone who does not respond, which is me, and how that has affected us as migraine warriors, how it's affected us as advocates in the migraine community, and just basically what that is like in our life. So right before I hand this over to Michelle, I just wanted to say thank you to Kat, who is the founder of Chronic Migraine Awareness, and she is going to be looking at all your questions and handing them to us so we can answer them. So thank you, Kat, for being here. We really appreciate it. You are an awesome friend, really are. And just so you know, Kat was one of the first people who welcomed me into the migraine advocacy world, and there's just so many people who are awesome who are migraine advocates. So, Michelle.
thank you, Shosh. So I have been using Aimovig since June of 2018. I started on the 140 milligram dose straight out of the gate. My diagnosis was chronic migraine disease. It was daily, and so basically I was having pain, I was having nausea, vomiting, all those sorts of symptoms every day prior to starting Aimovig. And I had been sort of treatment resistant and intractable up until that point, so I didn't have a lot of hope going into Aimovig, and my headache specialist tried to really make sure that my expectations were in line with a treatment and not a cure. What happened for me was actually rather incredible. I became what's called a super responder, which just means that my body responded really well to the medication. And so whereas prior to Aimovig, I would have 30 out of 30 migraine days a month, I initially went down to 8 out of 30 migraine days per month. And now I have 2 to 4 attacks per month. Wow. They generally last less than 6 hours, and they are generally really easily treated at home. Except for one earlier this week that was a bit stubborn. But other than that, I've had to I've not had to go to the emergency room. I've not had to go to my primary care doctor's office as much. I've been able to take significantly less medication. And I'm frequently asked about side effects in terms of Aimovig. And I am a person who has not had any side effects with Aimovig, which I know is not the case for everyone, but it is the case for me. And I'm supremely grateful for all of the time that I've gotten back and the quality of life that I've gotten back. But in some ways, because I was disabled so early by the migraine disease at 19, I sort of still feel like that 19-year-old despite being 34. So I'm having to learn a lot of things that people sort of learn in the daily course of life when they are sort of neurotypical or not having some sort of chronic illness. And so it initially was quite overwhelming and just a little bit challenging to deal with, which I wasn't expecting, because I always expected that I deal with anxiety and depression, but the anxiety predated my migraines. So I knew that was going to stick around. But because depression came for me after the migraines, I assumed that when the migraines got less, the depression would get less as well. And that's not really how depression works. And so I was all of a sudden sort of stuck in this strange situation where I felt like I was being ungrateful in some way because I was wasting my time being depressed when this is all I had ever wanted, was to have less of these symptoms and be less sick and less in pain. And so if there's anybody out there who has a similar experience to mine, I would really recommend talking to someone, whether it be a therapist, whether it be a family member, whether it be going into a program and talking to people about it. It is a major life change, especially for people like me and Shosh and Kat, who have made migraine advocacy such a part of our identity. It left me wondering if the community was still going to value my experience, my opinion. Were those people who became my friends going to drop out of my life the way my other friends had when I got sick? Spoiler alert, they did not, because the migraine community is amazing. But those were all concerns that I had. And they were things I wasn't expecting. So I just wanted to put them on your radar so that if anybody else ends up feeling that way, they can say, okay, I know it's not just me. I have a little bit of a heads up on that. And so that's sort of my story in a nutshell as a super responder to Aimovig with 0 side effects. I'm going to throw it over to Shosh, who is what we call a non-responder, and she's going to tell her personal story, and then we will start taking some questions.
Very cool. I'm just going to adjust the camera just for a minute, so if you guys can just wait just 1 minute. I think we're good in the CGRP group, but we are actually streaming live to 2 pages at the same time, which is really cool. So I am unfortunately what is called a non-responder. So just to give a little bit of a background to me, I have had migraine for over 45 years. It's my earliest childhood memories, and I have gone in and out of chronic and then back to episodic, normally high frequency episodic. So for anybody out there who has episodic migraine and somebody is telling you that it's not as bad as chronic migraine, or you cannot be disabled by it, then I'm here to tell you that you definitely can, and it definitely can be. Just depending on how bad it is. Migraine is a disease that's on a spectrum. So you could have a mild migraine every single day. You can have a horrific migraine where you just don't even know how you can survive the pain. 12 to 14 days a month or less than that. And so we're all different, and migraine is so complex. I just want to encourage you that that we are fighting against stigma as migraine warriors, right? And we're just all so different, and we all are disabled not only by the pain but by so many other symptoms that we experience. So that's my background. And when I was a child, I was brought up in the United Kingdom, actually originally in London, and the treatment for me until I hit my early 20s was opioids and acupressure. And kind of whatever combination my mother came up with, which probably came from her mother, which was like lavender and vinegar and various other things actually, which all made me worse. So needless to say, by the time I was in my 20s, I was not addicted to opioids, but I was having what's called rebound headaches or migraine medication overuse headaches. And so that was really challenging for me. When I came to the States, I saw a headache specialist after headache specialist. Some of really the best headache specialists in the world I have seen. I've been really privileged, and I've never really responded well to anything long term. So a couple of times I have, and I've tried nearly 50 different medications. So for those of you who are watching who do not have migraine disease, yes, that is over 50 different medications I have tried in multiple combinations, multiple strengths, all of which have to be tried for at least 3 months to figure out whether or not they work for you. So it's been quite a journey. So fast forward to last May, and I would say that I'm one of those people who is really at the end of the line. I do not have any other options. I cannot take triptans because of side effects. I cannot take DHE because of side effects. And I am no longer on any preventives because of side effects, because they don't work. So when I found out about the CGRP medications, I kind of jumped on board with everything I had, thinking, whoa, this is going to be my salvation. It's going to be a miracle medication. We know it's not a miracle drug, and it doesn't claim to be a miracle drug. It's not a cure, and it doesn't claim to be a cure. But when you're desperate, your hope tends to all be tied up in the thing that is coming down the line. And for those who don't know, this is the first migraine preventive medication ever. It's ever been designed for this disease. So, and it's been 25 years or more since we've had any medication for migraine to abort the attacks. So this is huge news for us. Needless to say, there was a lot of excitement in the community, and I was one of them. And so I got involved in migraine advocacy, and I started my group and started taking the first medication. And unfortunately, I did not get better. In fact, I went from high frequency episodic, which is almost always every month, 14 days with a horrific migraine, level 7 to 10 pain, I would say, to 25 days a month. So I'm definitively chronic migraine. The pain was not always as bad in all of them, but it was just almost every single day. And then besides the increased number of migraines, migraine attacks, I also had some side effects. I know some of you are wondering, how do I know there's side effects? And there are some people out there who are going to say, you know, there's no way you can have side effects because people are saying these medications don't have them. Some of the things that happened to me, I know definitively, this came from the medication. I started losing my hair. As you can see, I have a lot of hair. I have a lot of hair. So when my hair started falling out, it was really noticeable. It was all over my home, literally. And within 6 to 8 weeks of stopping the medication, it stopped happening. I did have some other side effects as well. Some of them, it's really hard to know if they are caused by the medication, if they are aggravated by the medication, or if it's just coincidence. And so I keep a very detailed migraine diary to try to figure some of this stuff out, but it's so complex and there's so many triggers to migraine attacks. And migraine changes as well. You know, you can have a great month or a great week or a great 3 months, and then all of a sudden disaster hits. And so to figure out whether that's the medication or not is really challenging. Anyway, after 2 emergency room visits, a few weeks after I started Aimovig, I decided I had enough of it, and I was put on to Ajovy. So Ajovy seemed to be okay for the first couple of months until I had an allergic reaction on my 3rd injection. Now, I did not get better on the first 2 injections. I just need to let you know I was a non-responder. I did not get any worse. Fortunately, I kind of stayed around 22 to 25 migraine days a month. But the allergic reaction was not very pleasant. I was itching all over. I had hives all over. It was like I had this massive breakout of eczema literally everywhere within hours of the injection, which I just never get. And so my doctor told me it was probably not smart to have another Ajovy injection. And so there ended my CGRP journey for now, but not forever. I am taking a break. I am letting the medications get out of my body. So Aimovig is definitively out by now, and Ajovy has probably another month or 2 to be out of my system. And then I am going to evaluate what I want to do next. Like I said, I'm at the end of the road. So I don't really have any choice other than to keep trying new medications. And there are a number of new medications coming down the pipeline, including some more CGRP medications. There's an IV coming out, eptinezumab. There's some Gepants coming out for both abortive and preventive use, and there's lasmiditan coming out, which is for those who can't take triptans. And there are devices, and actually there is a lot more in the pipeline. So it's kind of exciting, right?
It's very exciting.
Yeah. So I guess what we want to know now is, do you have any questions for Michelle and myself? Or I can just start on the questions that I already know. So
I would like to say one thing quickly before we start, because we're using the terms super responder and non-responder. There are some people who use the terms success and failure in terms of medication, and I want to be very clear that it's not a patient who is failing. It's the medication not working the right way with their body or not responding the right way, but it is in no way a failure of a patient or a doctor or a person if their body doesn't respond to that kind of medication. And right. So I think that when we hear and sometimes internalize, I've failed so many medications, it sort of starts to make us feel like we've done something wrong. When, I think I can speak for both of us, that Shosh and I were both pretty much at the end of the road, and I just happened to catch a break with the Aimovig, and it went the other way. Right. For her, someone did ask what type of migraine I had. So I have chronic migraine disease, which is 15 or more days per month. And I was having migraine attacks every day. I was never without pain. I was never without nausea. And I was vomiting pretty much every day. And the first 6 months of 2018 were the sickest I had ever been. And then as soon as I started taking the Aimovig, I saw an immediate change, which was not expected. I was not prepared for that because I had been so sick and resistant for such a long time. It had been, I'd been living with chronic migraine for 14 years at that point. So I wasn't prepared for the success, as it were, that came along with that. So
yeah, I think for those people who, obviously I'm not someone who did respond, but just it's really hard when you have a chronic disease and you're used to living in pain, or like myself, I'm very isolated. I rarely get out of my home. Some of you may think, well, how did you make it to Retreat Migraine? These are the things that I do, very, very few. I save up my energy. I have a lot of strategies in place. I travel with a pharmacy. I get accommodations from the airlines. I wear a face mask when I go on the airplane, which is really weird. And let me see, what else do I do? Oh, I plan a week's downtime in my bed every time I get home. So the reason that I do it is, first of all, because there's several reasons. I want to make a difference. And I don't know if there's going to be an effective treatment for me in my lifetime, but I'm really hoping that there will be in my children's lifetime. 2 of my sons have migraine disease as well. There's a really good chance my grandchildren will also have migraine disease, and I want to make a difference for them and for everyone else in the migraine community. There are nearly 40 million people with migraine disease in America. That's incredible. And I believe 5 to 6 million who are chronic. Mm-hmm. That is just an incredible number of people. To put it all in perspective, there is only just over 500 certified headache specialists for all of us. And needless to say, we are not always able to get into headache specialists. So I have some questions here that people asked. It says here, is there any information to suggest how many years one has been chronic might impact how effective the medications are? Do you want to speak into that? Because that was really you, right?
It's I can't say that my response was necessarily typical.
Right.
So I can only speak to really what happened to me. But I was chronic pretty much from the get-go. I had my first attack, and then I went to see a neurologist, and they started becoming incredibly frequent really, really quickly. So I had been chronic for 14 years prior to Aimovig. Like Shosh, I had tried a variety of different kinds of medications, orally, IV, IM, all kinds of different things. So I don't think that we have enough information yet to make a correlation to say, to project who may or may not be a good candidate for things like this.
That's actually a huge challenge, and it's a big discussion amongst headache specialists. Who's going to respond and who's not? Who should be taking Aimovig? Who should be taking Ajovy? Who should be taking Emgality? Who really should not be taking these medications? We just don't know. I know that there was a lot of interest in biomarkers, but we're just not there yet. We are simply not there yet. So all I would say is that if you really need help and your doctor thinks that this is safe for you to try, then you don't have anything to lose by trying it, except possibly some side effects if you happen to be one of those people. But the positive side is that you may actually respond and get your life back, which is really huge. It's really, really huge. I got asked a question, are you angry about what happened to you, that I got worse and that I didn't know about the side effects beforehand, that we were told really the most predominant side effects were constipation and injection site reaction, possibly an allergic reaction. So no, I'm not angry, to be honest. My attitude is I would have gone into the clinical trials if I had not fallen into the exclusions and not allowed into them, because I really don't have any other choice. I'm taking rescue medication that is really not safe for me to take, to put it bluntly. And I know a lot of you are in that same place as well. So I'm not angry, but I do think it's really important that everybody who is trying these medications gives feedback about what they are like, what the real world experience is like, because clinical experience is just not the same. The clinical trials are different than real world. So it's just set up differently. They're very, very short in general. I know that there are some long-term trials, but the majority of them were short. In general, they take the healthiest people with migraine. You may think that that's not right, but that is just the reality of it. And so once it's finished phase 3 clinical trials, we go into really what's considered phase 4. I don't know if that's an official term, but I've heard a lot of doctors and pharmaceutical employees say that we're in phase 4. This is post-marketing and surveillance, which means that if you're taking one of these medications and you're doing great, let your doctor know. If you're taking one of them and you're having side effects, let your doctor know. But also, I strongly encourage you to report it to the FDA and report it to the pharmaceutical company as well. It's really, really important to do that. There are thousands of reports already made to the FDA, and they, I don't really know the process, I don't know if you do, but basically they look at all that information, see if there's general trends, and since I'm not a scientist or a doctor, I'm not going to go into any more details about that. But they take that information, it's really important, and the pharmaceutical companies, obviously they do actually want to know this, and the doctors want to know it as well. So you can make a difference by reporting if you had something happen to you that you think may be a side effect. Is that fair enough to say?
I think so. And so I know some folks are asking how you made the decision after having a negative experience with Aimovig to try another CGRP med. Can you talk a little bit about your choice?
Okay.
Not your choice,
yes.
your decision.
No, I understand. So I think at that time, there was so little known. There really is so little known. I've heard a couple of headache specialists say there's just more unknowns than knowns, and this is just the reality. There are. At that time, nobody really knew what happens if a medication doesn't work for you and you want to try one of the others. Is it safe to go straight to one of the others? These medications have a really long half-life, approximately 30 days. I know they're all slightly different, but that means they're not completely out of your system for anywhere between 4 to 6 months. That's a really long time. There were no clinical trials done on what would happen if you stop one medication, then you start another right away, which I did. On the date I was supposed to take Aimovig, I took Ajovy. So I think my attitude was Aimovig works slightly different in that it actually blocks the CGRP receptor site. We're not going to go into details about that here, but if you go to my group or you look online, you will see about how these medications work. Ajovy actually attaches to the CGRP itself, that peptide, so that it can't attach to the receptor. So my attitude was, if Aimovig didn't work for me and cause side effects, then maybe Ajovy would be different. And so that was why I decided. And again, I feel like I don't really have a lot of choice. Obviously, we all have choice. I have not gone on Emgality yet. But for someone like me who really doesn't have a lot of options, it's kind of, I'm juggling things. I don't know whether to, do I keep taking the rescue medication way too much? And then the rescue medication that most of us take who are chronic, have chronic migraine, it can affect your kidneys, affect your liver, it can affect your GI system, and just so many other things as well. So it was a fairly easy decision for me to make, I would say.
And I think what's also important when you're listening to Shosha's story or my story or anyone else's story is to remember that we are all individual, and the ways that we respond to things in terms of how well medication works or doesn't work, side effects, all those sorts of things are going to be really individual to our bodies, our type of migraine. And there are some questions coming in that are important questions, but they're really questions that need to be answered by a headache specialist, because Shosha and I can really only give our own sort of experiences about what's happening, because as far as I know, neither of us are medical doctors yet.
I am definitely not a medical doctor.
So
unlikely to be one either.
So if you do have questions that are specific to dosages, or should you keep trying a particular med, or which one should you use, those are really questions for your neurologist or your certified headache specialist, right, and or your pharmacist. I recommend making friends with your pharmacist and asking many questions.
Yes. I would say one of my concerns about these medications is because we had so many medications come out within a short space of time, and it's very complex. So figuring out how they work, how they're supposed to be handled. These are migraine medications that have to be kept cold. Then you've got to take them out of a fridge a certain amount of time before you use them. Then if you don't use it in a certain amount of time, you have to throw it away. And so it's kind of complex to figure all this out. And then there's patient access programs on top of that. It's a lot of information that is being thrown at us. I like to call it kind of a maze of information. And it's just a little bit overwhelming to figure that out. But part of what has happened with that is that not all medical professionals know all these details. So it's really important that you read the inserts so that you know what temperature it's supposed to be stored at, when you're supposed to take it. And if you're not certain about anything, contact your pharmacist, who is generally fabulous, hopefully. Contact your doctor's office, contact the pharmaceutical company. Most of them have nurse lines as well, and they can help you. So again, like Michelle said, we really can't speak into the medical questions. I have some questions here that we can't answer. I can't tell you definitively, yes, this causes this side effects, this causes that. We know that CGRP, which by the way stands for calcitonin gene-related peptide. Got that right, even with my brain fog. We know that has a lot of functions in the body. What we do not know is what happens when you inhibit it in the body. And by the way, that's not completely blocking it. It's just inhibiting it. There's just a lot of unknowns. So if you are like a super, super nervous type, you don't like trying something new, you're not happy with risk, or that is just an additional stressor for you. If you have not tried a lot of medications yet, if you're not the kind of person who likes to go into a clinical trial, that's a lot of ifs. This may not be the time for you to try this medication. I mean, talk about it with your doctor, but it's okay to wait a few months or a year or a couple of years until we know more. It's okay to make that decision and not to be the first one to jump in. For those who do try a new medication that's just been FDA approved, then you are part of phase 4 clinical trials, basically, where we are looking at what happens to people who have migraine with these medications in the real world. People who have comorbid conditions, people who have tried gazillions of medications, right? Just a lot of us are just very complex in terms of our disease. So you're just part of that, basically, trying to figure out what's going on, and that's why it's so important to report. And I have a question here. I think I answered it. Have I considered Emgality? Yes, I have considered Emgality. I'm waiting for Ajovy to be out of my system because, to be quite honest, I want to know what is causing what. So if I have side effects from Emgality, I want to know it's Emgality, not Ajovy. And to me, that's really important. And I don't know if I will try Emgality or if I will try eptinezumab, which is the IV infusion. At this point, the jury's kind of out, but I'm definitely going to try one of the others. And I'm kind of excited to try one of the others, because who knows?
And there are a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
One is about the itchiness that you experience.
Okay.
How long did it take for that to subside?
Okay. So the first time I had an Ajovy injection, I had a tiny, tiny little injection site reaction. It's nothing big. I'm used to injecting myself, so it didn't really bother me. The second time I had it, it was a huge red raised welt that was really itchy, did not go anywhere else. So for me, I'm like, oh, if it helps my migraines, my migraine attacks, what's the big deal? But the third time, I got the same injection site reaction, except it kept on growing. And then I realized I was very busy that day. So I was driving around, I had multiple doctor's appointments. And by the time I got home, I realized I was scratching everywhere, shoulders, head, everywhere, literally. I was itching all over. And then when I changed into my jammies to get ready for bed, I realized, hold on a minute, I have eczema all over my body. It's like it was on my abdomen, on my back, on my arms, on my legs. It was just so bizarre. So I immediately realized, obviously, this is likely an allergic reaction. I took Benadryl, and I have steroids, which I use to break a long migraine attack, and I took that. And so for me, it went away pretty quickly, but that's because I have the medication to treat it. Not everybody does. So if you are having what you think is an allergic reaction, contact your doctor. That's the best thing to say. Contact your doctor, ask them what they would recommend, especially if you have a widespread rash or a widespread itchiness and it's not stopping after a few hours. Please let your doctor know and ask them for help with that.
And another one of the questions that we were asking is the accommodations that you were talking about when you used to travel to things like this. I know that you save your spoons and your energy, but I know you do some very specific things that allow you to make it to things like this.
Sure.
And some folks would like to know about that as well.
Absolutely. So I have a face mask. I probably should have brought it. It's somewhere in my room, actually in my hotel room right now. It's an N99 face mask, and I absolutely rely on it every time I get on an airplane or even on a shuttle bus, sometimes in an Uber. In case you don't know, Uber drivers tend to hang those little smelly things from their rear mirror, and for me that is a migraine trigger. So I wear a face mask. I also contact the airline ahead of time and tell them that I have a disability and I need to have advanced boarding. And they have never had a problem with that. When I get to the airport, I go to the gate and I tell the person there, I really need to get on first. I can't stand on my feet for long. It probably helps that I'm wearing a mask because I know that I kind of look normal otherwise, which most people with migraine do. But they are always extremely accommodating to me. And also, theoretically, I have the option to move seats if someone next to me is wearing really strong perfume or is bathed in cologne that morning. But I've never actually had to do that because the mask helps me. And since I've done it, I've not had a migraine triggered by smells on an airplane, which is really cool. I drink lots of water. I tend to pre-dose with steroids before I go. Again, do not do what I tell you to do. I'm not telling you to do it. I'm not a doctor. This is what I do. But that's something you can talk to your doctor about. If you know that travel triggers your migraine, I have earplugs too. And this is a really good one. I learned it at a pain program I was just at for 6 weeks. Is that I actually finish packing more than 24 hours ahead of time. So everything is done. If I'm traveling on Tuesday, I am fully packed by the end of Sunday, which means on Monday, I can relax, or I'm allowing for the fact I may have a migraine attack. And that has really been a life changer. And then I plan downtime when I do nothing when I get back. What are your
That's actually a really important
strategies?
thing too that I have had to try to start learning to do is pace myself differently than when I was having constant migraine attacks and constant pain, because I was very good at pacing myself in that way, but now I have to relearn how to do it. And sometimes, like earlier this weekend, I pushed myself too far and I pushed myself right into the most severe attack I've had since I started Aimovig. And I can go back and I can see where that happened. And some were things I could have handled a little bit better. Some are things like weather that are just always going to be triggers for me. But pacing is going to be a huge issue regardless of whether you are a super responder or a non-responder or anywhere in between. Pacing and accommodations are always huge. And I think that it may seem like we're bouncing back and forth a lot here, but our main goal for this sort of live chat was to sort of present a fair and balanced view of not just someone who has had great luck and no side effects, and not someone who has not responded and had bad luck with side effects. We really wanted to try to widen the perspective, and so that's why we're sort of ping-ponging back and forth in that way. So Shosh, what would you say your pain level is like now, having just in general?
Well, there's probably no in general for me. Right now, I'm actually feeling pretty good. For me, this is about as good as it gets, so my pain level is really low. I personally do not like putting numbers on my pain level. A lot of us do not, but I am not at the level where I need medication. So that for me is a good thing, and I'm at the level where I can still smile. And probably the pain doesn't show too much in my eyes, but I do have brain fog, and my eyesight's a little blurry. And I just have a kind of nagging pain in my head, which is telling me, do not exercise, do not go out in the heat. By the way, it was 94 degrees here in San Antonio yesterday, which is really bad for me and really bad for a lot of people. So it's just kind of reminding me, hey, I'm still here. Don't forget that I can flare up anytime. And that's kind of what it's like for me. I live in fear a lot of time, to be quite honest, and it's really huge for me to make this shift into advocacy. I know we have some more questions, but I just wanted to quickly say that I got involved in migraine advocacy almost a year ago now, and it has been transformative for me. A lot of people are saying, wow, I could never do what you do, I'm so impressed, or others are saying, what can I do to get involved? All I can tell you is that my pain level is the same now as it was a year ago. Actually, it's worse than it was a year ago, but the way that I handle it is very different. Just finding my tribe, as it were, my community. We had a meeting today about the need to have community. You really need to have community if you have migraine disease, especially if you're chronic, or if you're high frequency episodic, just to know that you're not alone. I hear from a lot of people say, I'm different than everyone else. I have migraine attacks almost every single day, or I've had them for 20, 30, 40 years, or I've failed on all these different medications, and so I get side effects to all these different medications. Is there anybody else out there like me? And the answer is yes, there is. And when I discovered that, it was amazing. It really just blew my mind. There's others out there like me, as sick as me. Some are even sicker than me, which is amazing. And so you are not alone. So getting involved in migraine advocacy has changed the way that I handle and manage this disease, and has given me the courage and the hope to face tomorrow. A lot of us do not have that hope anymore. We don't want to get out of bed. We live in fear of the next attack. We don't want to be around people. We spend all our time trying to avoid triggers, and the thought of the next year, 5 years, 10 years, 40 years of living like this is so depressing that we just can't handle it. So I purposely do not think about 10 years away, or even 5 years away. I live each day as it comes, and I'm so grateful for my friends in the migraine community. I've just met some amazing people. There are some amazing people who have migraine disease. I'm just going to tell you, they are so welcoming. And if you're not involved in a migraine community or support group or online, I would just really encourage you to do that, because it really makes a difference.
I agree wholeheartedly with Shosh, and I would also like to say that I live in a different kind of fear now, which is a constant fear of, is the medication going to stop working? Or is this attack going to turn into the daily attacks that I used to have? Which, is a different kind of fear, I understand, but it's not something that I've been able to let go of. Even though I've gotten back, functioning parts of my life, it's still really hard to grapple with the trauma of living with such a chronic, debilitating illness for such a long time, especially during such formative years. And I know that some folks are asking, have I been able to join the work world? And what I've been trying to do is I have been trying to ease back into things in terms of moving my body around, going out of the house, taking really good care of my mental health and putting a lot of effort there. I do a lot of advocacy work. You guys have seen me and heard enough from me about that. But I am looking at some new jobs that are within my reach now. Again, because I used to be a preschool teacher. That's what I was in a past life, and that was my passion. And I really miss working with kids. There's also a certified peer counselor job that I'm looking into with a program that I work with. That those are things that even 3 months ago would not have been on the table for me, because I would have been too scared that I wouldn't have been able to make it to the job, or I would have had to call out too often or things like that. So I'm just now, as I'm approaching sort of the 10-month mark, really getting confidence in myself back and getting my my groove back, so to speak, I would say. And you know, the migraine community is what has kept me going through all the way to Aimovig and beyond. I was terrified to confess to the migraine community that I really was not having many migraines anymore. I didn't know how that was going to play out, but they have been so gracious and so happy for me in a way that is so selfless and compassionate and empathetic that I would just echo what Shoshana said about, if you have not found your place in the migraine community yet, there is one for you. Yeah. And you can approach either one of us online or through Chronic Migraine Awareness or a variety of different places, because there is a place for you here, and there will be something eventually that will help you, because I know that we're not going to stop doing this until this isn't an issue anymore. Right. Because we don't want kids and grandkids and further down the line, we want to use the pain and suffering that we've had to endure to make it easier for somebody else.
Right, absolutely. I have some very specific questions here. One is, somebody just wrote messed up giving shots. I don't know who you are, and I don't know what you mean by messed up giving shots, whether you took it straight out of the fridge and didn't let it warm up first, or if you took too many, if you took too few, if you waited too long. So what I'm going to do is just recommend that you talk to your doctor, and you could also talk to the pharmaceutical company as well and explain to them what happened. There are very specific guidelines for these medications. They're all injections, and they all are slightly different as well. You can call the FDA to report side effects. You can, if you took Ajovy, then the company is Teva. For Aimovig, it's Amgen. For Emgality, it's Eli Lilly. In my group, CGRP and migraine disease, if you're not a member of that, you can always join. And we have all that information, all the telephone numbers easily accessible as well. So you're welcome to just to come and browse around that group. There's a question here: have you ever heard of people having a migraine attack follow a second dose of Aimovig? I have heard a ton of things. To be quite honest, some people do report that. We have not had enough reports of that to know how common it is. Again, everything in my group is patient reports. It is not scientific, but there are definitely some trends. So again, if you're concerned about that, contact your doctor. Let them know, and I would also contact the FDA. Again, we have that information in my group. Let me see.
and to be very clear, even as I am called a super responder, that doesn't mean that I do not have migraine attacks anymore. It just means that they're not as lengthy, they're not as frequent, they're not as severe, and they are easier to treat. But I do still have attacks. I remember the first attack I got after I had taken my first shot of Aimovig, and I was really sad and thought it was the end of the world, but then it didn't last as long, and it was much easier to treat. And so what's really important to remember about these medications is that they're not being marketed as cures.
Right.
They're not cures. They're being marketed as treatments. And a treatment that works for me may not work for Shosh, and vice versa. Right. So it's important to find out what's going to work for you. I know that there have been a couple of questions with regard to specifically GI issues on Aimovig. I think people in general are wanting to hear mostly about constipation and about sort of nausea, vomiting, like those sorts of side effects. So for me, when I say that I've had no side effects with Aimovig, I mean none of it. I've had no constipation, no nausea, no vomiting, no injection site reactions, other than, it hurts a little bit when you inject yourself, but that's how that works. But I didn't have GI issues, but I do know that there are a lot of other people who have, and we do know that constipation is one of the side effects that is listed on the insert. So that is something that they saw. It's just not something that happened for me. But Shosh, did you? It did, yes. Did you find that your side effects were less depending upon the dosage of medication you were on?
So that's really tough because I only did one injection of 70 and then I went straight to 140. The neurologist I was seeing at the time, was not a headache specialist, but was absolutely fabulous, was just very concerned that I may react to it. So he wanted me on the low dose for the first injection, and then I went straight up to 140. So there's really no way of knowing. The side effects that I got, as well as the ones that may have been side effects and may not have been, they all happened after I took my third dose or towards the end of my second dose, so somewhere around there. So it's really no way of knowing whether it was dose dependent. I'm seeing some of these other questions here. Is there any reason to really hope if Aimovig fails, for example, that one of the others may work? Absolutely there is. Definitely, we have heard a lot of reports of people who said that Aimovig did not help them, and either Ajovy or Emgality did, and vice versa as well. And the headache specialists that I have spoken to have also confirmed that they are seeing that in their practice. So there is definitely hope. Hope is really important, obviously.
Well, and the mechanism of action is a bit different between the way that Aimovig works and the way that Ajovy and Emgality work. There's a question about if I noticed a difference with Aimovig from the first time I took it. And I did, and I messaged my headache specialist and I said, is this possible? Could this already be helping me? Because that seems too quick. And whether it was or wasn't, that at that point in my life, that was when my migraines got significantly better immediately following the first shot. I had been in a really stubborn, intractable attack. I took the injection. I woke up the next day pain-free. And I have not remained pain-free the entire time, but I am the majority pain and symptom-free, whereas prior to Aimovig, I was the majority pain and symptom-full.
That's an interesting way of describing it. That's kind of cool. Yes,
sense.
Absolutely.
And someone did ask to clarify what is considered a super responder. I think different people say different things, but in general, what I have heard is that if you are getting a reduction of 75% or more in your migraine days, that is sort of what's generally considered a super responder. And again, we're just using that because those are the terms that are out there, not because I've done anything right or better or...
Right.
So.
That's cool. A couple of quick answers to questions. What is the life of CGRP? I'm presuming you mean CGRP medications. How long till it's out of your system? They're all slightly different, but from my memory, they range between 28 to 30, 31 days half-life. I could be off by a day, so please forgive me if I am. You can pull up a half-life calendar online and see how long it takes to get out of your system, but approximately 5 to 6 months, depending on your metabolism. That doesn't mean if you're having side effects, that those side effects are going to last 5 to 6 months. Mine or my hair loss, I should say, lasted about 6 weeks after my last dose, and then it slowed down and then it stopped. I also have had a lot of GI problems besides constipation, a lot of abdominal pain and some other things, which is not particularly pleasant, including just such bad bloating. I looked like I was 9 months pregnant, and I already have 3 children. I'm not planning on getting pregnant again, and that was not really appreciated. So I try to look on the humor side of things, because honestly, there's so much about this disease that it's just not funny. It's horrific. We live with an incapacitating complex neurological disease for which there is no cure, very little research, almost no doctors, and very little understanding. And so I personally try to laugh whenever I can. If you're on my profile or on my page, Migraine Meanderings, you'll see I post a lot of memes that are humorous, just because I personally find that it helps to smile and to laugh about it. Here's another couple of questions. Anything about, I'm not sure if this is episodic cluster headache or episodic migraine. And okay, so episodic migraine and cluster headache is what Kat's saying to me. These medications are all approved for both episodic migraine and chronic migraine. So episodic migraine is if you have up to 14 migraine or headache days per month, and then chronic is 15 or more. So cluster headache is a completely different disease. It is excruciatingly painful, I'm told. I've never had a cluster attack, fortunately. So there is one of these medications. It just applied to the FDA, and I need to remember, I believe that it is Emgality, galcanezumab, which is by Eli Lilly. I got that right? Yes. So they just applied to the FDA with priority review for episodic cluster headaches. So that is that one here. There is another one here about Botox and Emgality. Again, we're not doctors. Officially, it is not contraindicated. Your insurance company may not be happy if you want to take, or your doctor wants you to take 2 extremely expensive medications, but there's nothing to say it can't be done. A lot of people in my group are doing it, and I cannot speak into that anymore. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, and I'm seeing another question about if someone has taken Aimovig for 3 months with no help, would you suggest a different or not to take, I assume a different medication, or not to take Aimovig anymore? And that is an excellent question, and it's also an excellent example of the kind of question we are not really qualified to answer. I know there are some doctors who say they'd like you to try things for 3 months. Some doctors say 6 months. It depends a lot on your personal comfort level, your side effects, how much it's helping you versus how much it's harming you. If it's harming you in any way, you sort of have to weigh the checks and balances in that particular situation. So for me, it was helping me, so I continued taking it. For Shosh, it wasn't, and so she stopped.
Right. I know that some people who have had a little bit of success in the first few months, but not a lot, if they're not getting intolerable side effects, they have continued on the medication under their doctor's direction. Again, talk to your doctor about it, and it has, in some people, gotten more and more effective because the medications build up in your body. Definitely, every migraine treatment, generally we're told to try it at least 3 months, as long as we can tolerate it, but we're not doctors, so you need to talk to your doctor about it. But the certified headache specialists that we communicate with, in my group at least, are saying, give it 3 months, sometimes 4 months, up to 6 months if you can. My attitude is, don't you really want to see if this medication can help you? I would probably have stayed on Aimovig for 6 months if I did not have intolerable side effects, just because I want to know when I come off it, this is really not the medication for me. That's what I would do personally. You may not have that comfort level. And so again, talk to your doctor. But when you talk to your doctor, just remember that this is your body and this is a disease that you live with. So when you talk with your doctor, it's a two-way communication. A good doctor's going to allow you to say what it is like for you and what your concerns are about the medications, if you have any. And then you'll be able to listen to them and get information from them. So just be aware that the relationship you have with your doctor should be a partnership. And a lot of doctors are now starting to respond in that way. And it's really fabulous. Kudos to every doctor out there who sees the patient-doctor relationship as a partnership and not a parental model. It really makes a huge difference, especially in a disease like this, right?
And my personal experience also in terms of with medication building up in my system, again, I've only taken the Aimovig since it was successful for me. But as I said, I initially went down from having attacks every day to just having 8 days to now just having 2 to 4 attacks per month. So as the Aimovig built up in my system, it does seem to have decreased the frequency and severity of my migraine attacks. So my experience with that would lend some credence to that.
Absolutely. There's something here that says, do you know a website? I'm dropping papers here. By the way, Kat's doing a fabulous job. Thank you, Kat. She's writing really big so even I can read it. Do you know a website link a doctor can find out when to move from one CGRP medication to another? Nobody knows that definitively, as far as I'm aware. There's a lot of resources out there your doctor hopefully will be aware of, but if he's not, let's say you see a primary care physician or you see a neurologist who's not trained on treating headache disorders, then you can contact a headache center like the Jefferson, look at the information that they have, or the Diamond Headache Clinic, or MHNI, Michigan Head and Neurological Institute. I know there's some others out there as well, but those are the 3 that immediately come to my mind. There was a lot of information. All these places, UCLA, all these places were involved in the clinical trials, and they're monitoring patients as well. So sometimes you can get up-to-date information from there. And also in my group, we try to stay up on it, but it's changes so fast, it's kind of hard. Can you elaborate on airline accommodations you receive? Oh, I already took care of that one. I'm so sorry.
So I think we're being asked if either one of us have taken Ajovy.
Yes, I was on Ajovy for 3 months. I did 3 doses of Ajovy, and the reaction increased each time like a graph that kind of goes up like this. So the 3rd time it was a widespread allergic reaction, and I had to stop Ajovy, and I was very disappointed about that, to be quite honest.
I am seeing a question about insurance coverage. And I can speak about that a little bit, especially because I live in Massachusetts, which has a very strange sort of guideline regulation that doesn't allow us to access the free doses of medication that were offered through Amgen. And so I had to actually work directly with my doctor's office and my insurance company to get it approved. They do require that I get it a pre-authorization every couple of months. They sort of redo that over and over again. But what's interesting is that I work obviously with an incredible and wonderful, brilliant certified headache specialist. And I also work with an incredible, wonderful, brilliant primary care physician. And my primary care physician is actually the one who has prescribed the Aimovig for me, which makes it a bit easier on her because there are not as many people at her office trying to start taking Aimovig or Ajovy or Emgality as there are at a headache specialist's office. So it will depend on your insurance. It will depend on your doctor's comfort levels. Generally, insurance companies are wanting you to see a neurologist or a headache specialist to be prescribed these medications. But sometimes if you are concurrently seeing a general practitioner or a primary care physician as well as a headache specialist, the primary care physician can do the prescribing, and that can make it a little bit easier in terms of an access issue.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, insurance is a really, really hot topic. I can only speak for myself, really. I had Medi-Cal and then I had Medicare. Both of them I got approved. I got approved for Aimovig on both of them. Got approved for Ajovy on Medicare, and I was denied initially for all the times, and then after an appeal I was approved. I have very extensive records, but I have to say that for Ajovy, I'd already started with a new headache specialist, and he did not have any of my records. They do not honestly have the time to go through medical records that look like a library, and so but he was still able to get it appealed and to win. For those of you who think, you know, my insurance company has denied it, or I have Medicare, Medicaid, or Medi-Cal, or I don't know what the others, TRICARE, all the government-funded insurance, you're not going to be able to get it. That is not necessarily true. We are seeing a huge number of people like myself who are able to either get it immediately or to get it on the first appeal. By the way, you can appeal up to 3 times. I have to say I'm extremely persistent, so when there is an appeal going on for a medication that I need, I will be on top of it. I'll call my insurance company, I'll call my doctor, I'll call my pharmacist. And if I get contradictory stories, sometimes I will actually be able to get all 3 of them on the line at once, just to confirm which is the most accurate story, and so which one I really need to go after. But if you think that making an appeal has to be an easy process, or that once you've been denied that you're done for, you're not going to be able to get the medication, that's not true. It can be a complex, exhausting, discouraging process, but if you are persistent, I just want to encourage you to be persistent, you may well be successful. There are also some organizations that will help you with your copay while you are fighting to get on these medications. There are a lot of patient access programs for people that have commercial insurance, but for those who are in government-funded insurance, it can be a little bit more of a challenge because we don't have access to them. So the Patient Advocacy Foundation helps, and there's another one, HealthWell, that can help as well. I have a little bit of laryngitis, so I apologize, my voice is a little crackly.
I will say that I am on the state insurance in Massachusetts. It is Medicaid. It's Mass Health for those of you who know what that means. And we were able to get it covered through Mass Health. And that means that I can just go to CVS and pick it up. I don't have to have it delivered through a specialty pharmacy or anything like that. So I have had success with getting it covered, but like Shosh said, you have to be very persistent, and you have to make the calls.
Sure.
And so
so we're gonna end this real soon. We have a few more questions that we already have, so for those of you who have not had your questions answered, feel free to post them, and we will try to answer those questions. I can't guarantee it's going to happen in the next couple of days, because again, we're at Retreat Migraine, which is being organized by the Coalition for Headache and Migraine Patients. I just want to give them a quick plug. This is the first ever migraine patient conference, and we have over 200 people attending. We are so excited to meet everyone, and I know a lot of people are excited to be coming. So a couple of quick questions. Can we hope for a price decrease after the 12-month trial? I really don't know that. It would be nice. I would not bank on it, but that would be interesting to see. Is there a CGRP IV coming out? Yes, it's called eptinazumab. It's kind of a mouthful, and we do not have a brand name for that. It'll be wonderful once we do, but they applied for FDA approval in February. So I believe they do not have priority review. So right now we're looking at around 12 months before that comes out. Another quick one. Oh, how is it different? I believe that it's like Ajovy Emgality. Okay, so don't quote me on this, but I believe it's like Ajovy Emgality, and it attaches to the peptide. So that's the mechanism of it. It's different in that it's an IV, so theoretically it could start working the same day, in a matter of hours, theoretically, and I don't have a lot more information than that on it. The only other question I'm going to answer, let's see, what was the mask called? I've worn 3 different masks. One is a Vogue mask, one is a Cambridge mask, one is a name I can't pronounce, but they are N99 masks. So I like to have one that's a fashion statement. I like to wear the white ones. Kat is laughing at me. I reckon if you have to wear a mask, and basically you're putting a visible face on an invisible disability. So as much as we complain all the time, people say we look normal and we're not, it's actually really hard to put that visible sign of an invisible disability on. So I reckon if I'm going to do it, it may as well look kind of cool. So that's what I do. I wear one that's kind of cool. I have one that looks a little bit like a peacock coloring. I have another one that's, again, I'm being laughed at here. We have to laugh at each other. I have one that's kind of purple. I just got one today that came from Cambridge Mask that's called the Prince George. And it has little crowns on it. It's black. It's so cute. I'm actually going to wear that on the way home. We have some masks here at Retreat Migraine for some folks, and they have pandas on, and I think one actually has the Union Jack, which is kind of cool. An American may not want to wear that, but it's kind of sweet. I love wearing these masks. They're kind of awesome. Let me see. We have a couple of others. Does anyone inject every other month? I really do not know about that. It would be off-label. So talk to your doctor, but that's not tested. Is there any other questions? Oh, shall we answer this question? Do you want to answer this one or shall I?
You can answer it.
Thank you, Michelle. You notice I got your name right every time since then, right?
Yes.
My brain is functioning a little better. So the question is, why do neurologists insist that there is only constipation as a side effect? Actually, this is a two-part question. Are there many doctors on this site? I think that's what they're saying, a part of the site. So we're live streaming to two places right now. One is the Migraine Warrior, which I cannot speak to who is on that site. But we're also live streaming to the CGRP and Migraine Community Group, which is a closed group. There are some doctors on my site. They generally do not make comments. They do not talk to people who are on the site. They're just there to observe. But the majority of people are actually people who have migraine, and we have some caregivers. So caregiver means someone who does not have migraine, but who helps take care of someone who does have migraine. So why do neurologists insist that there's only constipation side effect? That would be because probably on the insert it says specifically that the side effects noted most frequently, and they give a percentage which I can't remember, were constipation for Aimovig and then injection site reaction, and very similar ones for the other two as well. But it does not say these are the only side effects. It says those are the ones that were noted most frequently. So what that actually means is there almost certainly were some other side effects, but there was such a low percentage of people that it was really hard for them to know whether it was statistically significant. I'm really proud I got that word out. I have a hard time with it. Which means that there just wasn't enough for them to know whether it was just coincidence or if it was actually caused or triggered by the medication. So that's important for us to remember. Again, we're in the post-marketing surveillance period where it's really important to know what your experience is, what my experience is, what Michelle's experience is. But it also unfortunately means that for those doctors who are not on the cutting edge of migraine research and disease, and it's a fast moving field right now, that they do not necessarily know all the other information. So again, this is where you can be a partner with your doctor, make it a partnership, communicate with them, and just to encourage you that a lot of us don't know our rights. And I'm not talking about kind of rights where we do marches or, some of you may want to do that. I'm just saying the right to respect as someone who has migraine disease, the right to have adequate treatment, the right to have a doctor who listens to you and actually writes in your medical records what you say to them, the right not to have stigma, the right not to be discriminated against, the right not to lose your job because you had a migraine attack, the right not to be embarrassed or humiliated because of this disease. These are basic human rights, and this is a right for you if you have migraine disease. So I would just encourage you to stand up and to have the courage to say, I have a disease, it's not my fault. There is no cure, and but I'm a person as well, and I'm trying to take care of myself the best way I can. So that's really important. That's really what advocacy is about, right?
And I think it's really important to make sure that everybody knows that there are doctors out there who are willing to partner with you, who are willing to listen to what you have to say, who are willing to make it a discussion and a partnership. And that if that's not something you're finding in your current relationship, I would suggest trying to bring it up with that doctor or finding a different doctor if that's accessible to you. I've been very lucky to have access to doctors who are willing to work with me as a partner and are willing to acknowledge me as an expert on my own migraine disease and my own body. But it took